Americans possess a terrifying amount of unearned confidence when holding power tools. Why pay a licensed professional when you can just void your homeowner's insurance with a blowtorch and some duct tape? From neighborhood psychological warfare to illegal motorized furniture, we are looking at 50 times people took the concept of do-it-yourself way too far. 1. Living off the grid sounds peaceful until your neighbor decides to play mad scientist with absolute garbage. We are talking about rural innovators who weld scrap metal, stolen car alternators, and rusted washing machine parts into towering monuments of questionable engineering. The end result is a violently wobbling, terrifyingly loud wind turbine that looks less like green energy and more like a medieval siege weapon preparing for liftoff. It generates exactly enough electricity to power a single light bulb, while simultaneously creating enough noise to ensure nobody within a 5-mile radius will ever sleep again. 2. Paying for a theme park is apparently too mainstream for backyard adrenaline junkies, which led to the creation of the homemade human slingshot. This aggressively dangerous DIY project usually consists of 2 massive telephone poles, an ungodly amount of industrial surgical tubing, and 1 incredibly foolish volunteer who probably lost a bet. The launch itself is a spectacular display of physics in action. The landing, however, is rarely a graceful return to Earth. It is much more accurately described as an unplanned, high-velocity collision with local flora, fauna, or the side of a poorly placed storage shed. 3. Stapling a few icicle lights to the gutter is for amateurs. True American holiday warriors view December as a full-blown psychological arms race against the rest of the neighborhood. These DIY light shows are so aggressively massive and violently synchronized to heavy metal music that they can literally be seen from low Earth orbit. They routinely cause localized power grid failures and make the legendary Griswold family display look like a single depressed candle. It is the only time of year when blinding your neighbors is legally considered festive cheer. 4. Traffic jams have broken many men, but a few backyard mechanics refuse to suffer quietly in a compact hybrid. They take an old heavy-duty truck and transform it into a personal armored assault vehicle. While not exactly military-grade tanks, these rolling steel fortresses are heavily plated, ridiculously slow, and absolutely illegal to drive to the grocery store. It transforms a miserable daily commute into a slow-motion statement of absolute defiance. The guy in the sedan might be saving on gas, but the guy in the homemade armored car is definitely surviving the apocalypse. 5. Defeated by a stubborn pickle jar? A normal person grabs a rubber grip or runs the lid under hot water. The true American DIY warrior views this as a direct insult to his masculinity. He marches that jar straight out to the garage and locks it into a heavy-duty steel bench vise. What follows is a high-stakes battle of torque and sheer stubbornness. There is no middle ground in this fight. The only 2 possible outcomes are a glorious, triumphant snack or spending 3 hours mopping up broken glass and vinegar from the concrete floor. 6. Converting a retired yellow school bus into a mobile home is a trendy alternative lifestyle choice. But some overachievers look at a flat metal roof and decide what it really needs is a 2-story wooden log cabin bolted directly to the top. This architectural nightmare perfectly blends the rustic charm of a remote wilderness retreat with the terrifying reality of a top-heavy vehicle navigating a windy highway. It is a brilliant way to experience the freedom of the open road while simultaneously acting as a rolling traffic hazard and a bridge inspector's worst nightmare. 7. A standard 3-bedroom ranch house is painfully boring, which explains why certain homeowners bolt full-scale, non-functional lighthouses to their suburban roofs. These massive coastal beacons are usually located hundreds of miles away from any actual ocean and offer absolutely zero navigational aid to maritime vessels. However, they do serve one incredibly vital purpose. It is the absolute best way to confidently tell the pizza delivery driver that you are the guy with the 60-foot glowing tower in the cul-de-sac, making a wrong turn practically impossible. 8. A Florida homeowner finally snapped after one too many break-ins and decided a standard alarm just lacked showmanship. His completely rational solution was to rig his own front door with a homemade, high-voltage electric chair contraption. He essentially turned his front porch into a death row execution chamber for local burglars. This takes the concept of a shocking welcome to a highly illegal and deeply terrifying extreme. You really have to wonder if the warning sign on his lawn was just a poorly drawn skull and crossbones on a piece of cardboard. 9. Clipping a drive-through menu board and losing your side mirror is a uniquely modern tragedy. But instead of paying a mechanic hundreds of dollars, the seasoned American motorist employs the ultimate temporary fix. They simply grab a tiny makeup compact or a plastic shaving mirror and heavily duct tape it to the side of the door. It is a masterful solution that perfectly captures the spirit of aggressive frugality. It also serves as a clear warning to other drivers on the highway that the objects in that mirror are significantly more desperate than they appear. 10. Paying designer prices for pre-ripped jeans is an absolute insult to anyone holding a garage full of power tools. Frugal fashionistas across the country regularly use heavy grit sandpaper, kitchen cheese graters, and even industrial angle grinders to achieve that flawless distressed aesthetic right in their own driveway. It is a truly bizarre economic process where an individual pays full retail price for a perfectly good pair of pants, and then immediately inflicts $50 worth of catastrophic structural damage to the denim, entirely on purpose just to look stylishly impoverished. 11. When a massive summer heat wave hits and public pools are crowded, the true backyard engineer just looks at his pickup truck. By throwing a heavy-duty blue tarp into the truck bed and flooding it with a garden hose, the legendary redneck swimming pool is officially born. It is a stunning display of structural ignorance that puts thousands of pounds of sloshing water directly over the rear suspension. It is the ultimate mobile party feature, right up until someone accidentally pops the tailgate open and causes a catastrophic, highly embarrassing neighborhood tsunami. 12. Surviving a brutal heat wave before central air conditioning required some questionable redneck engineering. One legendary setup involved running a standard garden hose directly through the living room window and just spraying yourself in the face every 15 minutes. It is arguably the absolute laziest indoor sprinkler system ever conceived by mankind. While it technically gets the job done and rapidly lowers your core body temperature, it also guarantees a nasty case of mild hypothermia and ensures your living room carpet will soon grow terrifying new species of black mold. 13. Staring at your neighbor's ugly fence every day gets old quickly. One highly motivated Californian solved this by building a house that literally spins on its foundation. With a simple push of a button, his entire living space slowly rotates, offering a completely fresh view from the kitchen window. It is a mechanical marvel of real estate. Just remember that if you stumble home late after a few too many drinks, finding your own front door might turn into an impossibly frustrating game of architectural roulette. 14. Any dad can build a basic wooden treehouse, but a rare breed of suburban lunatic decides his backyard desperately needs a fully functional, gravity-powered roller coaster. Constructed entirely out of cheap PVC piping, pressure-treated lumber, and sheer parental overconfidence, these backyard death traps snake violently over the garden and aggressively close to the neighbor's fence. It is a wildly impressive feat of amateur structural engineering that essentially turns a standard Sunday afternoon playdate into a high-speed, uninsured backyard carnival ride where heavy-duty helmets are absolutely mandatory. 15. The tactical shovel is a hilarious trend sweeping through suburban survivalist groups. These self-proclaimed apocalypse experts take a perfectly normal garden tool, aggressively sharpen the metal edges with a grinder, wrap the handle in yards of military paracord, and proudly declare it the ultimate weapon for the end of the world. It is supposedly designed for the exact moment you need to quickly dig a latrine trench and simultaneously decapitate a zombie. In reality, it is just an incredibly awkward, horribly balanced piece of metal that makes planting petunias surprisingly dangerous for your shins. 16. Down in Houston, Texas, a man named John Milkovich spent several decades slowly covering his entire residential property with over 50,000 flattened beer cans. What started as a weird weekend project slowly morphed into a shimmering metallic monument dedicated to excessive alcohol consumption and incredibly cheap aluminum siding. The legendary beer can house stands today as a glorious testament to what a man can achieve when his dedicated drinking hobby successfully crosses the line into a full-blown architectural statement. It is the ultimate neighborhood recycling program fueled entirely by domestic lagers. 17. Sitting near a beautiful lake is fine, but bolting a trolling motor to patio furniture is pure American innovation. The motorized floating picnic table is a glorious piece of backyard engineering, usually powered by an electric motor and a heavy marine battery. It elegantly combines the relaxing joy of amateur boating with the constant, nagging paranoia that one sudden shift in weight will send you, your friends, and a massive bowl of potato salad straight down to a watery, mayonnaise-filled grave. 18. Tucked away in rural Wisconsin is a colossal scrap metal sculpture park known as the Forevertron. It was painstakingly constructed by a highly eccentric man who legitimately believed he was building a functional celestial travel machine. He was convinced this massive pile of welded junk would eventually shoot him straight into the heavens on a magnetic lightning force beam. This towering iron monstrosity is exactly what happens when your weekend science fiction hobby collides with access to unlimited industrial salvage, a large empty field, and a very active welding torch. 19. Swinging an axe is exhausting, and buying a safe hydraulic log splitter from a hardware store lacks a certain element of mortal danger. Enter the homemade engine-powered screw splitter. This terrifying device features a massive, aggressively threaded metal cone directly attached to a screaming gas motor. It grabs onto solid oak and violently rips the logs apart with pure, unstoppable torque. It is a ruthless machine that commands absolute respect, has zero safety features, and looks like it desperately wants to grab your winter gloves and pull your entire arm into the abyss. 20. Welcome to the bizarre architectural world of the Earthship, where houses are constructed entirely out of dirt-packed tires and empty beer bottles. The final product is a masterpiece of sustainable, off-grid living that ends up looking like it was designed by eco-friendly hobbits from a post-apocalyptic future. Your suburban neighbors will politely pretend to admire your deep commitment to saving the planet and reducing carbon footprints. That admiration lasts right up until the exact moment they try to sell their own house and realize your garbage mansion ruined their property value. 21. When dealing with local zoning boards and property taxes becomes unbearable, a simple privacy fence will not save you. The ultimate American DIY project is simply seceding from the United States and declaring your backyard a sovereign nation. The micronation movement features actual properties like the Republic of Molossia out in Nevada, complete with its own fake currency, bizarre laws, and a hilarious ongoing war with East Germany. It is the absolute pinnacle of homeownership, because the only homeowner association you answer to is the one where you elected yourself supreme dictator. 22. Cruising around the lake on a standard pontoon is for rookies. True aquatic party animals refuse to be limited by a single level. Across America's waterways, you will spot terrifyingly top-heavy pontoon boats equipped with completely homemade second-story wooden decks. These floating monstrosities are often fully loaded with heavy wet bars, charcoal grills, and sketchy plastic water slides. It has ceased being a functional watercraft and has officially transformed into a floating residential code violation that is just one aggressive wake away from capsizing and ruining a very loud bachelor party. 23. Torn between the hauling capacity of a heavy-duty pickup and the legroom of a family sedan. The rural American solution is a blowtorch. Backyard mechanics simply weld the front half of a car directly onto the back half of a truck. These glorious, Frankenstein-style pickup limousines represent a breathtaking level of mechanical ambition mixed with a complete, terrifying disregard for chassis integrity or safe turning radiuses. In this specific garage, safety is absolutely third, and structural engineering is treated as just a vague, cowardly suggestion. 24. The plush living room recliner is the undeniable symbol of lazy comfort, but someone figured out how to make it highly mobile. By ripping the chassis off an old riding lawnmower and bolting a floral-patterned sofa right on top, the motorized couch was born. It allows you to casually cruise down the street to the local gas station without ever having to stand up or put on real pants. It remains the only motor vehicle in existence where you can get a drunk driving charge while technically still lounging in your living room. 25. Calling a professional plumber to fix a broken shower head costs actual money. The aggressively cheap alternative involves grabbing an empty 2-liter soda bottle, stabbing it a dozen times with a hot nail, and screwing it onto the pipe with plumbing tape. This brilliant disaster of a life hack delivers a highly pressurized mist that manages to be both physically painful and pathetically weak at the same time. It feels exactly like pressing your face against a leaky garden sprinkler and is a strong indicator that you have completely given up on life. 26. The intense paranoia of the Cold War never really died. It just got a major real estate upgrade. Instead of digging a tiny hole in the yard, highly motivated preppers are actively purchasing massive, decommissioned military nuclear missile silos and converting them into multi-level luxury underground mansions. You get the absolute peace of mind that comes with 4-foot-thick solid concrete walls and blast-proof steel doors. The only downside to surviving a global nuclear apocalypse in absolute comfort is that your cell phone reception down there is going to be incredibly frustrating. 27. Silver duct tape holds this country together, but a certain demographic has elevated it to high fashion. Highly dedicated teenagers have spent hundreds of hours crafting fully functional formal prom dresses and 3-piece suits entirely out of heavy-duty adhesive tape. Sure, the outfit is completely waterproof and could probably survive a bear attack. But wrapping your entire body in industrial plastic means it also has the exact same breathability as a sealed plastic sandwich bag. It guarantees a magical evening you will never forget, mostly due to the agonizing, full-body sweat rash. 28. A convertible lets you feel the breeze, and a hot tub relaxes the spine. Some absolute lunatic in California decided to marry the two and built the legendary carpool. It is a fully functional, street-legal vehicle where the entire interior is just a massive, bubbling hot tub. Imagine sitting in rush-hour traffic on the freeway, completely submerged in warm, chemically treated water, steering with wet hands. It is easily the most magnificent, mechanically complex, and phenomenally dangerous method of transportation ever conceived by a human brain. 29. Building a wooden deck boosts property value, but some amateur carpenters like to live dangerously close to a catastrophic collapse. We are talking about massive outdoor platforms constructed with absolutely zero visible support columns, just jutting aggressively out into thin air. This is not a patio. It is a terrifying physics experiment testing the sheer holding power of cheap galvanized screws. Attending a neighborhood barbecue on one of these floating death traps requires blind faith in a deeply finalized life insurance policy just in case the hamburgers get too heavy. 30. You love your dog unconditionally, but sometimes your arm is simply too tired to provide the required affection. The heavily engineered solution is the automatic petting machine. These bizarre contraptions usually involve a spinning fan motor, a wooden robotic arm, and a stuffed glove aggressively slapping a very confused golden retriever. It is a massive, overcomplicated mechanical setup built for a single, ridiculous purpose. Watching it operate forces you to ask the obvious question: did building this monstrosity really take less physical effort than just scratching the dog behind the ears yourself? 31. Stringing up a sketchy backyard zipline for the kids is a rite of passage. Fabricating a full-sized, operational metal Ferris wheel and powering it with a rusty lawnmower engine is a spectacular descent into madness. This is not a professionally inspected carnival ride. It is a slowly creaking, groaning wheel of terror that smells heavily of exhaust fumes and bad decisions. The thrill of the ride has absolutely nothing to do with the scenic view from the top, and everything to do with quietly praying. The amateur welding holds together for one more miserable rotation. 32. Every kid looks at a staircase and wishes it was a playground slide. Some adults actually fund this ridiculous fantasy and hire contractors to install massive, twisting plastic tubes going straight from the master bedroom down to the living room. It is a fantastic, whimsical way to make your morning commute to the coffee maker incredibly fast. However, it completely ignores the harsh reality of adulthood. Carrying a basket of folded laundry or a heavy bag of groceries back up a slippery plastic incline is an absolute physical nightmare. 33. Upgrading a car stereo is normal, but the amateur bass community has pushed sound waves into the realm of structural assault. These fanatics pack the trunks of cheap hatchbacks with custom-built, aggressively massive subwoofer boxes that literally defy the laws of physics. The bass drops are so violently powerful that they visually flex the car's glass windshield, blur the driver's vision, and routinely trigger anti-theft alarms 3 blocks away. At that volume, nobody is actually listening to the melody. They are just willingly subjecting their internal organs to a blunt force trauma massage. 34. If your plastic mailbox keeps getting obliterated by bored teenagers swinging baseball bats from a moving truck, it is time to escalate the situation. The ultimate defensive DIY upgrade involves sinking a solid steel industrial I-beam deep into the earth and encasing a welded engine block in 500 pounds of wet concrete. It is a silent, beautiful trap that aggressively screams that it is time to play a new game. It practically guarantees a shattered wooden bat, a broken wrist, and a lifetime of intense lower back pain for your local mail carrier. 35. Riding a standard unicycle already demands the balance of a circus performer and a high tolerance for public humiliation. So naturally, an American mechanic decided the only thing it was missing was high-speed motorized propulsion. By aggressively strapping a running 2-stroke chainsaw engine directly to the single wheel, a beautiful nightmare was born. It is a bizarre method of transportation that brilliantly answers a question nobody was asking. How can we perfectly combine the horrifying danger of exposed moving engine parts with the absolute maximum level of physical instability? 36. Hoarding cheap promotional ballpoint pens in a desk drawer is a completely normal habit. A man down in Houston, however, decided his collection needed to be highly mobile, so he painstakingly superglued over 10,000 individual pens to the entire exterior of his sedan. It is visually overwhelming and creates a bizarre aerodynamic drag. It is truly the only vehicle on the highway where you will never ever be caught without something to write with. But trying to explain the aggressive texture of your car to a drive-through car wash attendant is totally impossible. 37. Those tiny, battery-operated plastic cars for toddlers are adorable until a grown man with a socket wrench gets involved. A massive underground community exists where adults rip out the weak electric guts of a plastic toy Jeep and violently shove in a heavy-duty gas engine or a high-voltage motor. The result is a terrifyingly fast, incredibly unstable, completely street-illegal go-kart capable of highway speeds. It is the absolute best way to aggressively relive your childhood while simultaneously earning a massive speeding ticket from a very confused highway patrol officer. 38. When a cheap plastic bracket snaps, a normal person throws it in the trash. The seasoned garage tinkerer summons the dark magic of combining liquid superglue with a pinch of ordinary baking soda. The instant these two elements meet, they trigger a violent chemical reaction that creates a rock-hard, indestructible plastic weld. It is a brilliant, highly toxic trick that can repair absolutely anything in seconds. Unfortunately, it usually ends with your thumb becoming permanently and aggressively fused to whatever broken household appliance you were actively trying to save. 39. Buying a proper snowblower is expensive, and shoveling the driveway by hand in the freezing cold is exhausting. The ultimate winter DIY solution involves violently strapping a heavy piece of scrap plywood or an old mattress directly to the front bumper of a rusted sedan. This legendary redneck snowplow setup relies entirely on cheap zip ties, stretching bungee cords, and a complete disregard for the vehicle's transmission. It is a spectacular way to clear 3 inches of fresh powder while simultaneously ripping the entire front fascia off your daily commuter car. 40. Flying across the ocean just to stare at ancient rocks in an English field is incredibly expensive. A much better option is driving out to a remote Nebraska farm to witness the majestic glory of Carhenge. It is a structurally accurate, full-scale replica of Stonehenge, constructed entirely out of vintage American automobiles, stacked on top of each other, and heavily spray-painted stone gray. It is a beautifully weird tourist trap that serves as a stunning tribute to both mystical ancient druids and the inevitable rusting of mid-century Detroit steel. 41. Sometimes a zoning dispute with the local city council escalates slightly beyond writing an angry letter. A muffler shop owner in Colorado took civil disobedience to a terrifying new level by spending 18 months secretly encasing a massive bulldozer in foot-thick concrete and steel plating. He then drove his homemade impenetrable killdozer straight through town, methodically flattening 13 buildings, including the town hall itself. It remains the most extreme, terrifyingly effective, and highly destructive DIY demolition project ever fueled entirely by pure, unadulterated rage against local bureaucracy. 42. Hanging wet laundry outside in the fresh breeze is wonderful, but walking all the way to the far end of the yard is apparently too much cardio for some folks. The highly engineered solution is the motorized clothesline system. By hooking up a series of complex pulleys to an electric motor, your drying underwear is slowly conveyed right back to your hands. It is an incredibly elaborate mechanical answer to a physical problem that only exists if you are aggressively determined to never take more than 10 consecutive steps on your own grass. 43. While most hobbyists are perfectly content building birdhouses in the garage, a small faction of hardcore radio nerds have set their sights on the actual vacuum of space. These basement geniuses spend years hand-building fully functional, miniature DIY satellites known as CubeSats. They then pay exorbitant fees to have their homemade metal boxes shot straight into low Earth orbit on actual rockets. It requires a staggering, genius-level intellect and a financial budget that could have easily purchased a brand new luxury sports car, all just to beep a tiny radio signal back to Earth. 44. An ambitious teenager in Michigan named David Hahn decided that tying knots for a Boy Scout merit badge was just too basic. So he casually attempted to build a breeder nuclear reactor right in his mother's backyard potting shed. By extracting radioactive materials from hundreds of broken smoke detectors and glowing antique clocks, his homemade atomic project actually started emitting dangerous levels of radiation. It was so terrifyingly successful that the federal government had to show up in hazmat suits and legally declare his suburban garden a toxic Superfund cleanup site. 45. Hiring a licensed electrician to install a new outlet costs hundreds of dollars. The terrifyingly cheap alternative involves daisy-chaining 6 fluorescent orange extension cords together and drilling a massive hole straight through your living room drywall. This spectacular electrical disaster usually snakes its way across the carpet, over a doorway, and directly into a cheap power strip overloaded with heavy kitchen appliances. It is a glowing red fire hazard that aggressively violates every single building code in the county and practically begs the local fire department to pay you a visit. 46. Long before heavily funded tech companies started selling expensive virtual reality goggles, the American garage tinkerer had already solved the metaverse. The glorious DIY version consisted of literally duct taping a smartphone inside a folded cardboard pizza box and strapping it to your face with elastic bands. This masterpiece of aggressively frugal engineering allowed you to experience immersive 3D videos with the stunning, crystal-clear visual fidelity of looking through a greasy toilet paper tube. It was incredibly innovative, entirely functional, and visually made you look like the saddest cyborg on the planet. 47. The classic Volkswagen Beetle is universally known as a cute, highly practical, and incredibly slow commuter car. But absolute mechanical insanity occurs when a backyard engineer gets bored and aggressively bolts a fully decommissioned military helicopter jet engine into the back seat. What emerges from the garage is a 2,000 horsepower, street-legal monstrosity capable of violently shooting 40-foot columns of raw fire from the tailpipe. It transforms the world's most adorable vehicle into the automotive equivalent of a tiny shaking chihuahua possessed by a screaming underworld demon. 48. Taking a drive through the deep rural South will eventually bring you face to face with a beautifully bizarre piece of yard art known as a bottle tree. Homeowners take a completely dead tree trunk and jam dozens of brightly colored, empty glass liquor bottles onto the bare wooden branches. According to old folk traditions, this blindingly reflective setup is designed to lure in and trap wandering evil spirits before they can enter the house. It is a fantastic DIY project that serves as equal parts colorful landscaping and highly superstitious paranormal home security. 49. Some urban cycling enthusiasts look at a standard 10-speed bicycle and decide the daily commute just does not have a high enough mortality rate. This twisted logic leads to the creation of the infamous giraffe bike. By aggressively welding 3 or 4 bike frames directly on top of each other, they create a towering, wobbly metal monstrosity that places the rider 10 feet in the air. It provides an absolutely majestic view of heavy city traffic, but becomes a catastrophic, bone-breaking nightmare the exact second you encounter a red light and actually need to stop. 50. Dealing with a fat, persistent raccoon digging through the outdoor trash cans usually involves buying a standard wire cage trap. One wildly unhinged homeowner allegedly bypassed modern pest control completely and spent his weekend constructing a fully functional, historically accurate wooden guillotine in his backyard. Building a medieval execution device just to protect your discarded pizza boxes is an escalation of violence not seen since the height of the French Revolution. It is an incredibly effective, highly illegal, and deeply concerning display of woodworking skills that probably terrified the entire neighborhood. I know for an absolute fact at least one of you is currently driving around with a trash bag window or a heavily duct-taped side mirror. Confess your most humiliating, violently cheap DIY fix in the comments right now so I can publicly judge your garage disasters. Smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, or I am legally obligated to report your floating deck to the city.